Sam, thank you very much for joining us. It's good to see you virtually.
Right? Haven't seen you for weeks and weeks, so now at least we can do this.
Exactly. We can kind of catch up with one another. So you're in Utah,
I
and
am.
I'm in the St. Louis area. Tell me a little bit about your background, Sam. You have a rather unique background because you actually started as a building contractor.
Right. When people ask me how I got into the business of designing homes, I always say I kind of went a different way than most people. Most people dreamt of being an architect when they were a kid or
Right.
whatever. I was a home builder, and I moved my business to a fairly rural area where I found there was no local designer, there was no local architect. So if you were hiring somebody, you either went, 2 hours in either direction to a bigger town, or you were buying plans online,
Hmm.
or you might get the guy that teaches AutoCAD at the college, or the guy that works for the local engineer who would do it on the side at night to draw your plan for you. And as a builder, I'm like, I can't wait 6, 8, 12 weeks for the guy doing it part-time to draw. So I bought some software and I'm self-taught. As a builder, I
Amazing.
knew I knew how they went together. I had to learn how the software worked to be able to do it.
And that's what's interesting, Sam, because I think a lot of people don't understand that you can be book smart, right? And go to school and learn how to be an architect. But there's something to be said for a builder who truly understands how these homes go together and, quite frankly, how to value engineer them. And what I mean by value engineering is designing the home so they're cost effective to build. And I will contend that there are a lot of architects out there who do understand it, but there's also a lot of architects out there who don't understand connections and value engineering. So I think that's something that probably plays to your favor, correct?
Yeah, when you look at my plans, and you've looked at several of them now,
Hmm.
you'll always notice, um, I don't make a room 12 foot 2 inches.
And
It's
there's a
either
reason for that.
it's either 12 feet exactly, or it's 13, 14, whatever. Because who wants to pay to put a seam in a 12-foot roll of carpet for 2 extra inches?
Right.
That makes no sense. And for a room to be, 2 inches smaller, who would notice that?
So this is kind of a good takeaway for our listeners, because one of the things that we try to do is help educate people on the construction process, whether they're building in St. Louis or Utah or California, wherever. This is a good lesson that try to engage an architect or a designer, if you will, who really understands that these little inches truly matter when it comes down to the cost of building a home.
Absolutely. I do the same thing with other aspects of the house. If I have a client telling me, let's say they want an addition on their home, and we're going to go out 13 feet. I say, no, let's go out 14 feet so you can cut that last bit of OSB in half and use half of it on the other side. Because I know framers. If you have a 13-foot wall, you got 1 foot of OSB and drywall and whatever else going right in the dumpster.
Yep.
And that's not trash, that's money.
It's
You
money.
paid for
You're
it.
absolutely right. So what do you like better? Did you like it when you were a builder, or are you enjoying the design work better?
There's a lot of things I like about all of it. Um, I would say I'm happier and a little less stress as a designer rather than a builder. One of my favorite things that I did for years was develop land.
Hmm.
But what I found was I enjoyed the hunt for the right piece of property. I loved the negotiating to get it for the price I wanted to pay. I loved going to the city to beg to do what I wanted to do on that property.
Right.
I loved working with the civil engineer and the excavator to get it all done. As soon as I had a finished project that I had to sell, that's where the fun ended for me.
See, I'm going
I
to bring that back again to those people who are thinking about building a custom home. Again, it's important to engage a designer and a builder who truly do want to be your advocate when it comes to overall pricing, because in this day and age in the building industry, you have to fight for every nickel and dime. And so you want an architect, you want a designer who is going to be in your corner and is going to fight for those nickels and those dimes, because they will quickly add up to a few $1,000s or tens of thousands of dollars. And in this competitive environment, you need people who are in your corner looking out for you, and not necessarily looking out for themselves and trying to put as much money as possible in their pockets.
Right. And, I get people that will come to me first sometimes. I think the majority of the time people seek out a builder first, and then the builder, hey, let me introduce you to one of my designers or architects. I get people that come directly to me first, have no clue who they're going to hire as a builder. And I always ask, can I please introduce you to a builder or two or three? You can choose who you want to work with, but having a builder involved, even just lightly on the side while we're designing, is so helpful. So we don't end up with a finished project that's designed, engineered, and now every builder tells them it's $100,000 more than their budget is. Right. I'd rather we knew that while we're developing the floor plan and haven't even started, an exterior elevation.
And that's such an interesting point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of times we as custom home builders, when people first try to communicate with us, they're sometimes hesitant to engage their team, if you will, up front, because they think that they might be able to, down the line, get a better price if they do the competitive bidding route. Well, it's been our experience that a couple things can go wrong there. Number one, like you say, you kind of lose control over the design process, and if you're not communicating with the architect and not working on budgets, chances are the project will come in over designed. But number two, I try to help educate people to understand too that builder is going to be there with you and with the architect, looking for the best ways to cut costs and save you money. If you could go the competitive route, you're not always sure, number one, that you're going to be comparing apples to apples when it comes to the bid, because every builder is going to bid it a little bit differently. Their allowances are going to be different. And so it's not always truly black and white when it comes down to what's going to be the better path for me if I've gone down this competitive bid route. So we're huge proponents of putting your team together. That's the architect, that's the client, and that's the builder. You set your budget, whatever that budget is. It might be $500,000, it might be $5 million. But if you work together with the team, you stand a much better chance of succeeding at the end if you have worked together as a team, correct?
Absolutely. Because, you start out with especially if people are really honest and upfront about what their budgets are, mm-hmm. Then you've got a builder and a designer saying, okay, here's what we can make happen for you in that budget. Right. And then the client has the choice to say, okay, I could really up my budget by another $50,000 if I can have that one thing that you told me I can't have.
And it's funny because that just happened with one of the clients that we are working on in Utah now. You were kind enough to introduce us to them, but the exact same thing happened. They came back with a certain budget. We budgeted the project only to find out that they were, $30,000 short. But when you and I had a good conversation with them and explained the pros and the cons of what we were trying to do, they understood that. They went to their lender, and the lender said, sure, you can qualify for that. This makes a lot of sense. So it's that communication that really does make a difference.
Absolutely.
And what's also interesting and kind of fun is, as we entered the Utah market, you were one of the first people I met out there. I'm a huge proponent of the Home Builders Association, and so I did reach out to the Salt Lake City HBA and made some contacts through them. But I asked them for some referrals of designers and architects, and you were the first person that they connected me with. And I remember one of the first visits I paid back in September of 19 with my wife. We had a chance to sit down and meet with you, and we developed a real good friendship from there. And you've been instrumental in helping us kind of get our feet wet and get launched out in the Utah market. So we have you to thank for that.
I joked with you when you mentioned this before, and I've said it to other people who've been, have found me through the HBA. Mm-hmm. The reason I'm the first one, or one of the first ones they think about, is if there's an event, I'm there. If there's a need for a sponsorship, they call and ask if I'm interested.
Right.
I am so involved in the HBA, and it's been so instrumental in growing my business that
Right.
I would rather spend my time there than trying to advertise in 50 different other places hoping for business.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm a huge proponent of the HBA. I've been a member since 2005. I'm past president of the St. Louis Home Builders Association and currently on the board of directors for the National Association of Home Builders. So I think not only does it help give your business credibility, but the takeaway for someone who might be listening to this and thinking, well, what does it matter if my builder or my designer is a member of the HBA? It's just such a great resource. There's continuing education opportunities, continuing opportunities to share information, and it's just it's one of those organizations that I strongly believe that everybody in our industry should be a member, because there's just a lot to learn and a lot to grow. So since we're kind of talking a little bit about Utah versus St. Louis and that type of thing, what do you see some of the trends out west a little bit are? And you've designed homes now for both locations. Do you see much of a difference?
not a lot. I mean, the modern farmhouse is still kind of a really hot design.
Yes, it is.
We're still getting requests from quite a few people for a craftsman design. So, where people thought that was on its way out, it's not as in demand as it was.
Speaking of in demand, you're in demand.
Right. So, but the modern farmhouse look is really still really booming. Matter of fact, you probably noticed the one I sent you over the weekend to look at as a potential client. That's the look they were going for.
Nice house, by the way. Very nice.
Yes. I can't wait to see what kind of budget that one comes in at.
I think you and I both know where that's going to come in.
Yes, for people listening later, this house with the basketball court and everything else is pushing, I think it was just under 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's a great design though. But I think you're right as far as design and the similarities, because a project that I'll probably be sending your way soon is another, modern farmhouse design. That seems to be very popular. Craftsman,
right?
Sort of that contemporary, almost Frank Lloyd Wright in certain cases too. And those seem to be trends. So here's a question for you. If someone was to design a home to either the modern farmhouse or more of the contemporary looking homes, should they be concerned that they'll go out of style sometime?
I don't think so, because things come back around. I mean,
sort of like my bell bottom jeans, right?
Right. You're still waiting on those, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But certain styles will always look good. That modern farmhouse is going to look good forever. The real traditional is going to look forever. Look really good. I'm not so sure, my feelings on the real modern look, if those are going to be sticking around for a long time, because I get a lot of requests to remodel all the mid-century modern homes,
right?
That they want to get rid of that flat.
Change the look of them?
A lot of times we're putting a more of a pitched roof on them where they were pretty flat to begin with. The floor plans on them are all fairly good. It's just a lot of people want to take that old, 50s style and update it quite a bit on the exterior.
Right.
So I've done quite a few. I just went and looked at one the other day where it's got a flat roof and they want to put a regular roof back on it.
And it's interesting that, one of the things that I found out too, and a lot of people have been asking me, what's the pricing difference between the Salt Lake market and the St. Louis market? And quite frankly, there's not a lot of difference. I thought that there might be a little bit more because, Utah is a real hot market right now. There's a lot of construction activity going on. But I think I'm finding that both in material and labor costs, it's a very similar market, which again, I think is rather interesting.
Right. I think I asked you that question when we first met. I said, here's roughly what I see homes being bid per square foot here. And I think you said, yep, that's just about very similar.
And that's a great point. And let's talk about that a little bit, because we're not playing a poker game here. We want people to learn from this and understand that what drives the cost of construction, quite frankly, is how that house is designed. And it starts with the overall floor plan, the footprint, if you will. If you can keep that footprint rather simple, now that doesn't mean you have to make it a true box, but you can, if you have a tighter budget that you're looking to spend, think of things like the footprint and make it a little bit more simple. Look at the roof line. Don't have high pitches and lots of gables and lots of hip roofs and things like that. Keep the roof line a little bit simple too. It really does start with the design, and then another thing that drives construction costs quite a bit too are the finishes. What exterior material are going to be using? Is it going to be brick and stone and fiber cement or LP siding or whatever, or is it going to be a simplified, maybe just brick and some upgraded vinyl siding or things like that? So it's really about the design and the finish selection that drives the cost of these homes, right?
Right. I tell clients all the time, I'm sure you've heard me say this in meetings we've had, if we're going to have to start cutting out things to get to a budget, let's cut out the things that are easy to upgrade later.
Right.
Everybody wants granite countertops, right? You could put those in over a weekend with a nice tax return 2 years from now. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to add 400 square feet to their house 5 years from now. So, I always tell people, let's get you the square footage we need, do a nice home, but let's figure out ways that we can cut your costs without giving up too much. Yeah. Floor coverings is another easy one. Put in some cheap carpet for the first couple of years if you have to.
Right.
You could
and
save.
The thing that we found too is that there are just so many variables, and that's another reason I recommend working with your team up front, is because we're building homes, here in the St. Louis area, and some of the homes that we're now bidding out in your area, but we've had great success building really nice homes for $150, $160 a square foot. Now, the average is probably closer to $180 to $200 a square foot as far as what we're seeing in both markets. But if you're looking for a higher end home and homes that really have that, the high end finishes, interior, exterior, the fancy roof lines and the cut up footprints and all, those homes are going to cost $230 to $250 per square foot, right, and sometimes even more. And when we're talking this pricing, I also want to be clear that that's pretty much a turnkey price. That's for everything that goes into it, from, the whatever site preparation, engineering, all the construction, landscaping on the back end, all your flat work and everything. So I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, that's, multiply my square footage by 200 or 250 or 180 or whatever. And then I still have costs on top of that. That's pretty much a turnkey price that we're seeing.
Right. And similar here, when I'm meeting with a new client and trying to establish what their budget constraints are, I'll usually tell them, if you're figuring, around $200 a square foot for all your above ground square footage, meaning you'd have an unfinished basement, I said, if you use that as your benchmark, we can do just about, not anything. I mean, not the sky's the limit, but that is a realistic budget for a nice custom home.
Agreed. Now, it's not a good enough budget though. And the one thing I really like about your the Salt Lake City area, and we actually have some pretty strong ties to Salt Lake City and Park City and Heber and all that, simply because of family, friends, and businesses and that type of thing. But if you start thinking about that second home or a vacation home, and you might want to build it up in the mountains, Park City, Deer Valley, Heber, some of those areas, your cost per square foot is going to go up quite a bit, primarily because of site conditions, number one.
Right.
But also, you're going to design a home that fits into those areas. So you're going to have the very unique exteriors with the timber and with the stone and with a lot of windows. And your roof lines are going to maybe you have a metal roof, and you want to work in those gables and the hips. So if you're talking about building in some of those areas, the mountain areas, you've got to realistically expect a budget that's going to be at least 250, if not 300 a square foot.
Right. I think I'd mentioned to you before, we do quite a few cabin designs in the Timber Lakes area that's up above Heber.
Right.
And most of the clients that I'm working with up there are planning on $250 to $300 a square foot.
Yeah.
All of the suppliers, concrete suppliers charge more money to go up there just because, once you leave the paved road, you could be 2, 3, 4 miles on a dirt road going 10 miles an hour for a concrete mixer.
Exactly.
So some of those things, lumber suppliers charge more to deliver up there because it's challenging to get off that dirt road onto the property just to drop the material, and you can't just drop it in the middle of the dirt road.
It's another very good point there. Site conditions make a big difference too whenever you come to your final construction costs. So if someone is looking for land, whether it's an infill project, which means building inside an existing neighborhood, you're infilling a home there, or if you're looking, into an area maybe that's just being developed, or if you're looking at an area where they're selling one-off lots, site conditions across the country make a big difference in how much something's going to cost. So that's another reason to try to engage a builder. For example, like we will send either our director of construction or one of our superintendents out to visit a job site for prospective clients, because we want them to, number one, get exposed to our team a little bit, but number two, we want to make sure they totally understand that this lot may really look like a great deal on paper, but the reason it's a great deal on paper is because you've got a very steep terrain, which is going to affect your foundation costs, which is going to require retaining walls, which is going to require some special structural engineering. And all of a sudden, that really great priced lot turns into a very hefty price simply because of all the site work that goes on with it.
That's one thing that I've enjoyed since we've been working together, is I don't have to convince you that, hey, we might need to get a surveyor out there to do some topography.
Yeah.
So many builders and their clients are just afraid of that extra cost, especially to go to your client and say, hey, we need to spend a couple $1,000s of your money now before we've even started to know. Because I can take the topography that a surveyor provides, create a 3D model of your land, and then we can sit and look at how does this work once we place the house on there. We recently had this for one of our St. Louis clients where
here in Wildwood.
Yeah, we sat there and moved the house all over the property multiple times to see the optimal location that would cost the least amount of extra money. And no matter what we did, we still had to look and say, okay, we need a little taller foundation here than we normally would if this was a flat lot. But we were able to come up with a solution that the homeowners were happy with the location that was going to cost them the least amount of extra money that you wouldn't normally think of if you hadn't done that extra step.
There are just so many, so many small details, minor details like that make all the difference in the world. And if you put that team together, you're working with an awesome designer and a reputable builder, and a builder who's going to take the time to really look out after you. One of our core values is champion of the clients. And that's because we really do fight for them and work with them to obtain the best possible pricing, whether it's something as simple as interior solid core doors versus hollow core doors, and what the carpenter is going to charge you because he has a little bit more work with them, all the way to, like you're talking about, getting involved in that and spending the time to work with the client up front to find out where's the optimal location to place that house. That's what it means to one of your core values is champion of the client. And you do the same thing. You do the same thing with your clients. I know you do, because sometimes long after they paid you for a project, you're still working with them when a question comes up or if they need to change something.
Yeah, it would be interesting on this one project that we're talking about to look at what the cost of having the surveyor out there getting his topography was versus what the extra cost to build that home would have been had we stuck with the original location that the clients wanted.
I can tell you it's probably, and this is no joke, it's probably $25,000 or $30,000. There's no doubt about it, because first of all, the taller walls for the foundation, the extra rock for the foundation, and then the retaining walls and everything else just required for the driveway. There's no comparison. So that extra work saved them an enormous amount of money, and it was certainly worth it. So real quick
Absolutely.
before we wrap up, what are your recommendations? Somebody's out there listening. I don't care what part of the country, whether it is in St. Louis or happens to be in Salt Lake City. What are your recommendations? What do you tell people who are thinking about building a custom home but are hesitant because they might be a little bit scared about something?
Well, find some professionals first. I mean, and don't just look for the guys that have a really great website, because I mean that might tell you that they're a little more professional, but do a little research.
Right.
I did that on you when we first started talking. I'm like,
Uh-oh.
okay, I want to know a little bit, and we have a common client who just happened to move here from your area. I asked them if they'd ever heard of you. They hadn't, but some of their friends that they posted questions on Facebook saying, hey, has anybody heard of this builder? I saw the responses. Oh, yes, great builder, high-end homes,
Wow.
beautiful product. So do a little bit of homework before you just jump right out and find, the architect or designer that your friend used or the builder that your nephew used, whatever. Do a little research and make sure they're a good fit. You don't always want to go with the cheapest guy. Sometimes the cheapest guy is a great guy. Sometimes the cheapest guy is going to cost you more money than had you spent a little bit more money on a more professional guy.
Yeah, I agree. And what I tell all of our clients is, I know we try to be, middle of the road. We do not want to be the highest price builder. We do not want to be the lowest price builder. We just have found a real good, price point right in the middle, and you deliver. You offer great customer service. You build a really good high performance home. You deliver that wow customer experience, which is another one of our core values, and integrity is one of them, and then champion of the client. And that's who we are, and that's what we do. And I think that's why we get along, is because you operate in a lot of the same manners that we do. You take care of your clients. You fight for your clients. You work with integrity, and you give them that great customer experience. So it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to getting a chance to see you in person sometime real soon, as we have a couple projects going out there.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Take care. We'll talk to you real soon.
Bye-bye.